Hello, good afternoon, everyone. How are you all doing? Great, yeah. Who are the teachers here in the audience? Please raise your hand. Oh no, because they're at school, they're doing their job, but still very welcome here at this session about climate change education. My name is Sandy Snoeck, and I will be guiding you through this session on the most beautiful stage of ChangeNOW, the Eiffel stage. And just as the Eiffel Tower on behind me is dominating the skyline of Paris, the topic of climate change should dominate our educational landscape. At least if you ask it to our upcoming guests. They all want to foster environmental literacy and engage students' understanding of climate change. So we also require teachers and directors whom can implement innovative approaches to the curriculum. And just like that beautiful building behind me, this session consists of several stages. And the foundation is the keynote of Koen, the director of Take Action Global and the initiator of Climate Action Project. It's a pretty amazing project. You will hear that in his keynote. And after his solid foundation, then we can build upon the next level. Because we will move to the first floor, a panel discussion with educational experts, Florence, Rizzo, Dries, Rombouts, and Paul Turner, who are implementing all kinds of initiatives on climate education and action as well. And then we move on to the second floor of the Eiffel Tower, and that is represented by Cédric Ringenbach from Climate Fresque. And as you might know, it's the level of the restaurant. So don't put your hopes up too high. We won't have dinner here, but education, it's a bit like food. Everyone, it's something we all need, and everyone has an opinion about what's good and what's not. And what about the top, you might wonder? Well, that will come from all of you. Reaching the top, that stands for excellence. And we hope that this session will inspire you. So it will, just like the Eiffel Tower at night, enlighten everyone around you. How? By implementing excellent climate education and action in all your work, as a teacher, as a policymaker, or as an active citizen, in search for lifelong learning, because we'll also discuss that. Because climate change education does not stop when we graduate at school. But let's start with the foundation coming from Koen. He's the founder and director of Take Action Global. It's a non-profit organization focusing on climate action education. And the man from Belgium, he knows what he's talking about, since he worked as a teacher himself during 25 years. Not just your regular teacher, but one of the best teachers in the world. And if you don't believe me, maybe it has more impact when I tell you that none other than Bill Gates selected Koen in 2018 as one of the 10 best teachers in the world. With TAG and his climate action project, Koen has already involved 4.5 million teachers and students around the globe. Everyone can make a difference, so Koen, we're all ears to be inspired. May I have a round of applause for Koen Timmers.
Hello. I was recently at a radio interview about my book, which is about climate education. And I tend to be quite nervous about those radio interviews, you know, But when I left the studio, I got quite a bunch of positive messages, basically, except for one from my karate teacher who told me he didn't want to know me anymore. His best karate kick he gave me in decades. Apparently, he's one of the climate deniers. And, you know, the climate landscape is pretty broad, you know. There's no black and white. At one end, you may have people who primarily came to this conference to throw another bottle of soup at the Mona Lisa. And at the other spectrum of the climate landscape, we may have people like my karate teacher and people who are dumping a massive amount of messages on Twitter about the fact that climate change is a hoax. And in between so many different perspectives and personas, people who don't care, people who don't know, people who do care, but primarily point towards industry. And I believe that most of you, maybe all of you, are really concerned about climate change. But the thing is that we need to get everyone at the same page. And I believe that we need to realize that we cannot only expect government to take action. I believe that we all have an individual responsibility as well. For that, a change of behavior is crucial. And for that, I believe climate education is a crucial component. Now, allow me to give you some good news. More than 80% of all teachers and parents are up for climate education. 80, that's a lot. And second, students appear to have a big influence on the parents. At school they learn, but at home they are educating their parents about how to have a more sustainable lifestyle. For me, the first sign that climate education reaches beyond the individual learner. And so, 7 years ago, I got an idea and I wanted to launch a new experiment called the Climate Action Project. My idea was, let's make sure to educate students globally about climate. Let's make sure to have teachers globally to teach about climate change. So I decided to create an online platform, bringing all of them together on a global scale, because the thing about climate change is that the causes for climate change are merely the same on every continent. But the effects can be very different. Like students in Florida, they may suffer from hurricanes. Students in Sierra Leone, they have floodings. And today and yesterday, they had floods in Nairobi as well. And students in Australia may have bushfires. How about uniting all of those students together and trying to get them to the stage in which they can take action and even come up with solutions as well? I wanted to do more, though. I wanted to empower them, to give them green skills as well. I wanted them to be creative, think critically. I wanted them to come up with potential solutions and work together on a global scale. I was quite impressed to see that what was happening, basically, there was a real buzz on two different levels. At one end, we had the students coming up with ideas, solutions. They took positive actions. Positive, that's really important, I think. But we also had the teachers. They were really working on activities, sharing insights with each other through the platform, and they were really amazed by the facts and by the level of their students' engagement, basically. Allow me to give you some examples. We had students in America crafting and drawing. We had students in Tunisia who created their own video games. Students in Belgium who invited the parents to the school to show them what they were working on. We had students, can we show the pictures maybe, please? We had students working on a garden on a rooftop in China. Virtual interactions with students in Kenya. We had students in Colombia who installed a school radio so they could broadcast about sustainability. And students in Portugal who created a mural so they could be reminded about their work and the project basically every day for the next years. I was quite pleased. Now, I read in literature that 3 elements are really key and need to be in the right balance to bring quality education and sustainability. Head, hands, and heart, meaning that we need to be knowledgeable, we need to make sure that emotions are involved, and we need to take action after that. And I want to give you 2 examples. First of all, students knowing every little detail about climate change, but no emotions nor actions are involved. That's not going to work. They believe that technology is going to solve the matter. Second, students who are planting trees, but no knowledge about climate change, that's not going to work either. And frankly, that's more like, tree hugging, I would say. So let's not do that. Now, back to the project. The thing is that I shared guidelines with those teachers globally, and they had students of all ages. They were teaching all kinds of subjects. And it was really impressive to see that they all came with so very different outcomes, basically. We had students in Malawi who planted trees to save a lake called Chilwa. Their teacher told me that they planted 60 million trees. I was really flabbergasted by that. Students in Ireland, only aged 10, they noticed that the logo for recyclement is not consistent in Ireland. They created a new one, invited their Minister for Climate Change, and they managed to get this logo on every article which is recyclable in Ireland. They made national impact and received a letter from their president. Students and a teacher in Argentina, they noticed that you can create your own bioplastic with milk and vinegar. For me, that's just like, wow. Because everyone has those kind of resources at home, you know? Everybody is able to replicate. I like the fact that they were creating small Lego minifigures with that kind of plastic as well. But what I liked most is that the teachers shared this recipe online so that teachers from across the world were able to replicate this idea. A teacher, Ines in Portugal, she made a solar light. The cost is just like $1, €1. But the thing is charging during daytime and is giving free light during nighttime. Frankly, between us and the Western world, this is just like a gadget which we can use in our garden, you know. But then magic happens. Somebody reached out to me and he told me, like, I'm TJ, I'm from LA, and I really like this project. How can I help? And then he mentioned that he is an actor playing the surgeon in Grey's Anatomy. And what he did is he brought 200 of those lights to the slums in Kenya. And what happened is that those students, they come up with an idea, they learn about climate change, they found a solution, and they helped people in a different country, in another country, with their solution. It's not only about fancy gadgets. We also had students in Sierra Leone, and during the project, they had floods. And the thing is that 2 of those students died during this project because of the floods. They made a very emotional video about this, which was shared online with all of the teachers and all of the students. That is how we bring emotions and empathy within the classroom. Because of the project, we also had some really extraordinary opportunities. Somebody from NASA reached out to me, Rick, and he said, like, let's have a chat. We would like to work with you. I still remember having a meeting with him in my living room, and I was thinking, like, man, he must be 10 times as smart as I am. But then he told me that he was in charge for the landing site on Mars. They sent a Perseverance rover to the landing site, and he offered that all of the students were able to share their message of hope and send it digitally to this Perseverance rover. It may be something stupid, you know, but for the students, this really matters. It empowers them to do more. It's something they will never forget, and which you cannot really replicate with a handbook. We also had people reaching out to us, sending a message of hope specifically made for those students. Prince William, Jane Goodall, David Attenborough, and several presidents as well. And this is how one of those messages sounded like.
But do you know what gives me the greatest hope? It's you, young people. Your actions are already making people sit up and listen. And the choices you make now and in the future are key to putting us back on the path to recovery.
I learned 3 things during this project. First, students can do so much more than yelling and going on a strike. Don't get me wrong, we cannot stop calling on governments. We need to continue doing that. But the students, they have the potential to bring change now. And so do you. Second, in case we want to bring quality education, climate education, we need to heavily invest in curriculum and teacher training. We need to invest in professional development and make sure that those teachers know how to do this. And I'm really pleased and looking forward to the debate and the panel after this, which is going to focus on climate education and the curriculum. And third, we made impact. I'm pretty sure about that. But did we change the students' behavior as well, and with them their mindset? What I learned about impact is that different kind of people are expecting a different kind of impact as well. Governments, they are keen on having many people involved, so the scale of the network was important to them. Teachers, they speak the language of pedagogy. Media, press, they are keen on stories of impact and anecdotes. But when I spoke with climate scientists, they speak the language of data, the amounts of carbon avoided, reduced, and removed. So I decided with them to create an algorithm and an app, which is free, which allows to calculate those amounts, basically, the impact of climate education in an app, and it shows the amounts of carbon. The app is called Earth Project, it's freely available, and it's basically showing actions everyone can take. Because what really struck me is when I was speaking with people who cared about climate change, that even them often don't know what they can do. Small actions, so that is the first thing you can do on the app. Find actions everyone can take, culturally relevant as well. Then it shows the amount of carbon you have been avoiding, reducing, or even removing. You can even do it in teams, so a few students or classrooms or offices can take a small challenge for a few weeks and see which team has been doing the biggest effort, basically. Now, I wonder, do you know 3 things you can do? 3 things you can do at home today or here at the conference. Let me go back. The good thing is that this app is also available for you. It's not only available for students and parents and teachers, you can use it as well. It's freely available. Feel free to give it a try. Now, I may have lost 1 friend because of this small experiment, this project. But I gained a whole network of teachers and students who are willing to go forward. They are on one mission. And despite the fact that they are living in different countries with different cultures, habits, languages, time zones, they are taking action and they are even becoming friends. So I'm really pleased to know that climate education has the potential to strengthen people. And with that, I'm really happy and I'm really looking forward and hoping with all my heart, basically, that we can kick climate action education into curricula. Thank you.
And then there was silence. Koen, thank you very much for your inspiring speech. Wow, that kicked in. Messages of hope were sent to Mars. People came up with solar lights. There was a vinegar and something else mix where you can make microplastics of. So a lot of people were inspired and took action. And if you want to think about what you will be doing today, then you can use the app Earth Project to take action in your own life. Those of you who still want to talk to Koen afterwards, you can still stay in the session. He's available for questions, and he will also follow the upcoming parts. Because let's continue with the panel discussion, where we take a look at how people in the field of education in the UK, France, and Belgium implement climate change knowledge, emotion, and action in the curriculum. I would like to welcome Paul Turner from the UK. Give him a round of applause. Please have a seat. Florence Rizzo from France. And last but not least, Dries Rombouts from Belgium. It sounds like the beginning of a joke, no? Someone of France, the UK, and Belgium. But it's not a joke, of course. We're here to talk about climate education and climate action as well. Paul, after you gave everyone some water, that's very kind of you. I'm going to start with you. Could you just tell a little bit to the audience who you are and what should they know about you as the person representing the Ministry of Eco-Education? It's a cool name, no?
Yeah, thank you so much. The name comes, it's tongue-in-cheek. It's because we think the government aren't doing enough, so we've made our own ministry, and we're doing it from the ground up. So, my background is I was a secondary geography teacher, and then I've spent the last 3 years now building and bringing together lots of the teaching resources and opportunities already out there for teachers that at the moment are quite fragmented, and we've pulled them together into a place that is much easier for teachers to then weave into their existing curriculum. And we're very much driven by that sense of urgency that we all need to do as much as we can right now, and we do have the autonomy. We've got the ability to do that.
Okay, you bring together 100 resources with just top-notch curriculum material, and through your platform people can use it. Yeah, that's really great. And you work as a teacher yourself?
Yeah, so everyone involved in our project is a teacher, and we think that's really important because we think that brings it an authenticity. It also means that we're sympathetic and understand the actual demands of teachers and the situation that they exist in. And just going back in terms of what we've pulled together, there is a wealth of resources around the world, and I think we've heard already lots of that. Much of the problem is that teachers don't have the time or energy to be able to find it. And whatever we can do to help present it to them in a way that is much easier for them to pull on and draw from, that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Okay, great initiative. And then we have some other great initiative, because Florence, you're from Ecolhuma, a non-profit organization that wants to reduce educational inequalities. And you do that by empowering teachers and school directors as change makers. And why was that necessary here in France?
Yeah, so we started 12 years ago, realizing that teachers in France are 10 times less trained than in other countries. And of course, on new subject like climate change, this is not something that they have been trained on. And so we've done a barometer recently about the perception of teachers, and what they say is that they think that this is their role, and it's exactly the same statistic as we heard about. It's 84% of teachers that think that this is their role. But the issue issue is that less than 50% has the ability, the knowledge, the feeling that they can do it. So our objective is to reinforce them on their skills, knowledge, to be able to make sure that they can actually train students on that. So we have a platform, a web platform called Be Teacher, Être Prof in French, where we gather 170,000 teachers. And the idea is to have peer-to-peer learning and enable them, empower them to actually tackle new challenges. And one of those challenges, of course, is how to train on climate change and ecological transition.
Okay, and both of you, if I got it right, are there for primary and secondary education. And then we have Dries from Belgium. You work at Artevelde University of Applied Sciences in Ghent, and you're the head of the bachelor's degree journalism and communication. So, yeah, people after secondary, we just stop, or apparently you think something else?
No, you don't stop. Absolutely. First of all, I'm very glad to be here and to soak up this energy of change and action. And after the inspiring talk of Koen, this only amounts to more change and action. And I want to really harness that energy to use it in higher education. As a higher education institute, we are, of course, provider of formal learning. But learning, as we know, goes beyond formal learning, formal curricula. We learn every day. A day not learned is a day not lived, I think. And it starts in our schools, it starts in our higher education institutes, but it has to be a lifelong learning project. And that's what we also try to do in our higher education institute. We have a lifelong learning program as well, and we're also the initiator of unique programs such as the climate journalism course, which we started 2 years ago, which is the first one in Belgium, and that's how we try to foster that change and action energy in higher education.
Okay, I see a lot of commitment from the three of you, and that's really great, of course, but in first hand, actually, the Ministry of Eco-Education and Ecolhuma, you're taking over the job. It should be mandatory to have ecological topics in the curriculum already, so luckily there are a lot of engaged people, but why did you initiate it? Was there a lack of climate change education and action?
Yeah, from our part, definitely. And also, so it's not in the curriculum, not in England, in the UK. There are lots of organizations that are lobbying for that and demanding that change, but it takes time. And what we show is that actually there's so much potential within the current system. And we often talk about using the environment as a context, as a lens to be able to explore the world. And rather than teaching maths hypothetically with false situations, we can actually use real world circumstances and data to actually teach, and it makes the learning far more, it's real world learning, it's more meaningful.
Mm-hmm. Even through maths, you can talk about climate change education. Wow, that's a challenge.
Well, weather data. So we can look at rainfall, we can look at temperature, and you can get children analysing that data. And it gives a bit more meaning to the process of calculating averages if actually they can see it and they experience it firsthand.
And you started relatively small with 1,000 schools, but now you're already reaching way more schools, right?
Yeah, so we were really keen to make sure that we had a proven model, and we worked really closely initially with one school. We then scaled that with 15 schools in the UK that came from very different circumstances to also prove that it was something that would suit any situation, an urban school, a rural school, but also teachers that have different levels of knowledge and understanding themselves. And we looked at the impact, particularly on things like nature connection, as well as then the teacher confidence and the pupils' knowledge and understanding. We also looked at the wider community engagement as well, because something we think is really important is schools as a catalyst for the local community and the impact that they can have. And again, that's been mentioned on parents, but also the wider society. And yes, we're now very fortunate to have nearly 5,500 schools in the UK who are engaged through this. We work a lot with local governments to make that happen. So we have a very regional model in the UK and work with local governments. But there's 25,000 schools in the UK, so there's still so many more that we need to work with and approach.
All right, but already on a good path, I would say. Yeah. Same for you, Florence. You also offer didactical materials, tools to teachers, but you do not only focus on the teachers, because the school directors also need to be on board, right? That it's not only a few committed people.
Yeah, so sustainable development is in some disciplines in France, in the curricula, for example, of biological teachers, but there's lots of disciplines where they are not supposed to speak about this subject. So what we're doing is providing materials for English teachers, music teachers, so all the teachers who are not supposed to speak about that, to include that in their work. And also we are empowering school leaders with ManageEduc, which is a platform to support school leaders on their ability to gather the team around specific topics. And of course, the school in itself can be a huge subject of pedagogy, because we know that it's in France at least really not energy efficient. And so there is a huge renovation plan for schools, but you can learn from scarcity of resources and how to use energy in a different way, how to spare energy. And so the idea is to help school leaders to, of course, reduce their consumption at the level of the school, but also empower teachers and kids about the understanding they have about those kind of problematic, to make it a whole school approach, because otherwise it's just tackled from different silos, and what we want, of course, is to break silos, silos of the discipline, silos of the role of each person, and to have it as a whole school approach. So it's a big challenge, I think, in the next decade, is to make it interdisciplinary, to embrace the complexity of the subject, and to make it a common goal for all.
Yeah, not just a geography course, but really the whole board, the whole school directors are on board, everyone is playing its role. Yeah, and even if one teacher gets sick, that the project can still go on. Yeah. Okay. Dries, you already mentioned, so you work in higher education. You already mentioned that recently you added the climate journalism as an expert track in the Bachelor of Journalism. Why was that necessary?
Well, first of all, I can count the number of climate journalists in Belgium on one hand, and 3 of them I know in person. Belgium is a small country, but still, that's, you know, there is a need in the field to have journalists that have a specialized knowledge that can do a deep dive into the subject of climate journalism, of climate, and then make those compelling stories, journalistic stories that Koen also mentioned. So that's very important. We need specialists, and that's why we created this specialist course. And it's the first in Belgium, so it was a unique offer. But on the other hand, of course, I agree with everyone that we need to integrate climate literacy, climate change education as a whole in the curriculum. So that's something that we also aspire. But first of all, we need journalists that make the news stories that go beyond the day-to-day news coverage of floods, wildfires, the obvious events that can be linked to climate change. We have to go beyond that, because there are also so many other events in this world that can be linked to climate change. Conflicts, for example, and I think the Syrian civil war was one of the first conflicts that could be linked to climate change. And the same is happening in Ukraine as well. I saw an article on the first years of the war, which coincided with a peak in CO2 emissions in Ukraine because of the military material being used, which is often powered by diesel engines, etc. And so these stories, these not so obvious stories, need to be told by a specialized journalists that know what they're doing, and that they go beyond the understanding, the normal understanding of climate change.
All right. I hear you say it's important that people know about conflicts and that they also can link less obvious conflicts to climate change, to pollution. But more knowledge does not necessarily lead to action, because we are not as effective as we should be in terms of responding to climate change. So how are you trying to change that? It's a question for each one of you.
I was going to say, the way that Koen framed it in terms of head, heart and hand is a really useful way, because I think traditionally schools have focused on the science of climate and relied on very safe bits of knowledge, and are reluctant to move to the space of solutions and the broader discussions that we're having in society around what the suitable thing to, how to respond, and we need to involve young people in that. So it's very important that it's framed in schools in that way. And I do also think you're hinting at this, is that sense of framing climate change around maybe climate justice, or around ideas of equity and injustice, rather than the science, the numbers.
Florence, did you also experience that people, when they know more, that sometimes it not necessarily lead to action?
Yeah, the level of eco-anxiety is strong and is not always leading to action. So what we are doing also with teachers is to empower them on all the soft skills and mental health prevention, because the idea is to reduce stress and anxiety in school, because it can paralyze action. So the idea is to give them tools, also psychological tools, to identify signs of stress and reduce stress, and sometimes also action can help reduce stress, because you feel that you're doing something, you're contributing, so action saves you from being totally nervous about everything. So we're working on that, on this soft skills part of the training.
Okay, it's interesting. I want to do a little poll with the audience. Who suffers from eco-anxiety from time to time? So, that's quite a lot. Okay, so floods, droughts, wildfires. To whom it's really a paralyzing effect? Who really doesn't know what to do anymore and freezes? I see one hand almost freezed. Yeah, okay, 2 hands. All right, so how can we overcome the paralyzing effect? Maybe Dries?
Yeah, well, it's a good thing that people are anxious, but they are ready to take action and change, as you can see. I think we teach our students to be hard on the facts and hopeful on the solutions. In journalism, there's a branch called solutions journalism, which focuses on evidence-based stories. So really go into the science, go into what's going on, and this can be very baffling. This can be very anxiety-stricken, because it's such a big thing, climate change. This is the biggest challenge humankind has ever faced. So it's quite normal to be anxious, and the next step is to go beyond it, maybe after a period of mourning or something, and the loss of biodiversity, for example. But then you have to take the next step and go into action. And solutions journalism is a part of the solution, I might think. So you focus on the solutions, not make them too positive. It's not that every solution is perfect. There's no silver bullet, but you have to weigh the pros and cons and show that there are ways out, and there are ways of policy. There are ways, things that you can do as an individual, as a group, So if you offer that, if you make it tangible, you bring those tangible stories to the audience, I think you can really be a driver for change as a student journalist, as a journalist in the future.
You want to add something to that, Paul?
I was going to say that my experience and the experience lots of the teachers that I work with is actually that apathy is one of the main emotions that young people experience, and it's their disconnect and the way that the society, the structures in society disconnect them from positive action and impact. And then what we often find is we're trying to engage young people in recognizing their ability to have a positive impact and to nudge them out of the apathy that I think broader society puts them.
Mm-hmm. It's like Koen said in his talk, no, that if we, from the moment we create empathy, that we can see what the other one, what the effects are for them, then there's a connection and we feel more involved. You wanted to add something?
Yeah, the question is what we teach, but also how we teach it. And teaching about nature and ecology within 4 walls is not necessarily the best way to do it. So we've done a barometer to ask about how many teachers are actually teaching outside of their classroom, and it's only 20% of teachers doing that, and it's much less in secondary education than in primary education. It's like if you have kids, you're authorizing yourself more to go outside of the school, whereas if you're in high school, you think that it's not professional somehow to be teaching and learning in nature or by nature. So yeah, I just think that we also need to have a mental shift about the learning environment, and that school in itself is not necessarily the best learning environment, of course, to learn about climate change and sustainable development.
Mm-hmm. And you also have some nice examples now from projects that you did with schools and great results. You can share some of them?
Yeah, 12 years ago, we started to import in France the idea of design for change from University, and now it's the Learning Planet Institute in Paris of François Tadei that is actually running the program. So they have a higher education program, but now they're also running a program from primary school to high school. And the idea is to have 4 steps, like empathize with the issues, to invent an idea, 3, do it, and 4, share it with others to inspire and give the desire to others to actually do it. And so we scaled this program in France, in primary schools, in vocational schools, and it was really interesting to see the number of projects that the kids were able to invent, reducing paper consumption, taking care about the biological diversity, creating a community garden to actually also redistribute food to people in need in the village. So they have lots of creative ideas, and the fact that there's little is not preventing them from taking action. And so this is, I think, fundamental to learn from an early age that you are not too small to change things. And always when they are for example, calling the mayor saying, we need that, or we want to do that, they have even more strength than an adult, because they're inspiring, I think, adults to take action.
All right, that's really nice to hear. I was also wondering about, so you're doing that on top now. It's something, it's not set in the curriculum, so it's an extra value you add for the schools. Dries, you also mentioned that in your University of Applied Sciences, the expert track, it's not mandatory. Shouldn't it just be part of the curriculum in primary, secondary, and higher education?
Absolutely, it has to be part of the curriculum, and in our institute we also try to do it, but as I said, the expert track is more about specialization. It's about creating those specialists, while that in the basis of our curriculum we also have a lot of attention on climate change, and we do that through the SDG framework. So we're trying to connect the dots in all of our curricula in our higher education institute, and by that way integrate all the learning outcomes necessary to reach the goals on climate literacy. To be at least have the filter on, the glasses on of climate change. And that's something that we want to do, to integrate in all the curricula of our higher education institute. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Who's lobbying? Oh, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was going to say that one of the problems is that education is used as a political tool. It's heavily politicized, particularly in the UK. There is a particular approach that is dictated by the government, and it means there is not the space for the kind of conversation and teaching that needs to happen. And so, yes, teachers are trying to carve out the space, but with potential change of government, it may well swing the situation.
Mm-hmm. All right, you're hoping for another result after the elections.
Maybe.
Okay.
But in France, it is mandatory in some disciplines. Mm-hmm. It's just not all over disciplines. And I think this subject is a complex subject that needs interdisciplinary approach, which is not in the culture, at least in France. And I think if we're looking forward in terms of what education should be, it should be something that connect a subject one with another to understand the world and act to in this world. And so the way I see it is not just that we put it again in the different silos of math and of science and whatever, but think about this as a complex subject that needs to work in an interdisciplinary approach and embrace the complexity of the subject in that way. And so project-based education is a marvelous way to actually teach climate change.
And suddenly schools sounds way more fun than when I used to go to school. So that would be great. So way more holistic and overarching than not thinking in silos. So in an ideal world, there would it would not be necessary to have very committed non-profit organization like yours to teach even more about climate change and to have extra projects. So if there are some policymakers, educational policymakers here present, what would your call for action be towards them?
I think, at least for France, it would be to have continuous professional development in the law, and that it is a right of 100 hours, which would be 10 times more than what we have already in France. And in that, of course, we can make knowledge be more accurate. We can learn new way of teaching those subjects. And so that would be something that for me would be key if we want to give the tools to educators to be able to be real change makers.
Mm-hmm. And for you, Paul?
For me, I think it would be giving space in the curriculum, and that might come by removing some of the assessment. Particularly in the UK, we've got a lot of assessment. Children at 16 and then 18 are assessed again. We can remove some of that, and it might give space.
All right. Change Now, it's an event of hope. Dries, what message do you want to give to our audience?
Well, let's put in the right amount of knowledge and skills to get out the most action as possible, I think. And let's make it lifelong learning project, as you already said. We were talking about this as well. It's micro-learning everywhere. We need to create a space and a time in our heads to really focus on climate change and make it a filter through which we perceive education, through which we learn.
Mm-hmm. Climate change as a filter through which we learn. Thank you for these last words. I want to thank our panel audience, Dries, Rombouts, Florence, Rizzo, and Paul Turners. Please give them a round of applause. And as said, as the last words we heard, climate change education, it's a lifelong process. So let's continue our educational journey with Cédric Ringenbach. please come on stage. Cédric, you rose to fame as the creator of the workshop Climate Fresque. Maybe some of you have already seen Climate Fresque here in the venue. You're a man on a mission who wants to reassure that everyone, no matter your age, is well educated in climate change. Lifelong learning, that's important. So thanks for joining us on ChangeNOW. For the people who know already Climate Fresque, who knows it? Maybe do a little poll. Oh, wow, you did some good publicity here. Yeah.
Who played it?
Who's not aware?
Who's a moderator? Nice. Who's a trainer of moderator? Wow.
So it's just your fan base who's sitting here. That's really nice. So is there anyone who doesn't know the Climate Fresque? Because that was my first question. Can you pitch your project?
Yeah, I will be quick in this case. It's a workshop that is half a day long. It consists in having people around the table. They have 42 cards that they have to put in order of cause and effect. And by doing that, it's a very efficient way to learn the causes and consequences of climate change. And after this moment where it's about thinking about it, a reflection moment, and learning moment, after that moment we also have a discussion about what can be done to lower our impact on climate change. Now that we have understood that it's an important topic, what can we do about it?
All right, it's just not only the knowledge, but it's also the action.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. And how did you come up with the idea of Climate Fresque?
Okay, so I was teaching climate change for a long time because I trained myself by reading IPCC reports a long time ago.
The 2,000 pages.
No, not the 2,000 pages, only the technical summaries. Oh. So it's like 500.
Oh, only 500
only
pages. Oh, okay.
500 pages. And so, yeah, it's very interesting, but if you're not an engineer, I guess it's a bit harsh. So I was teaching climate change very often with friends of mine, colleagues, etc. And then one day I tried a format, printing a few slides of my presentation, in fact, and asking them to try if I see connections between these different components of climate change. And I took a step back and I was listening to the conversation. And you know, sometimes it was hesitating, etc. But I was feeling that it was the right way to learn about it, because you make mistakes, you correct yourself, you disagree, you argue, etc. And at the end, when you really understand how it works, it fixes the ideas in your brain. So I decided that it should be a way to teach climate change every time I do it, and I improved the workshop every time I used it, and that's how it became the Climate Fresque. Okay. And that was in 2015, the creation.
All right, and then your inspiration, you got it from Jean-Marc Jancovici, if I pronounce it correctly. Jancovici.
Yeah, that's how I came to care about climate. In fact, I saw a conference online of Jean-Marc Jancovici, and it was a real inspiration, a real slap in the face. And then later, so I went on listening to his conferences, etc. And later, I decided that it should be my full-time job. And then a year later, I started to work with him as the CEO of the Shift project. This is a think tank that works on how to decarbonize the economy. So I was very happy to be in this position, because during 6 years, I was paid to work on interesting things. Not everybody does that. Mm-hmm. And I met a lot of interesting people. I learned a lot of interesting things. And aside this job, I was also teaching climate change. And then that's how I decided later, when I left the Shift project, I decided to spread it more largely.
Yeah, and Climate Fresque it's quite a success, no? Because 3/4 of the audience already knows it and has been in a workshop or is a facilitator. So how do you explain the success of Climate Fresque?
I think it's because it's based on science, so it's not something. It's not something of a climate activist. It's not identified as something activist, or it's and so then people are confident with the content. I think that's one reason. The other reason is that it spreads organically because you have 10 people playing the game, for instance. One of them, two of them, decide to become moderator themselves. They can train themselves very easily. It's between half a day and 1 day of learning to become a moderator, a facilitator. And then once they are facilitator, they organize it with the family, with the friends, with colleagues, etc. And that's how it spreads. So at the beginning of the project, the doubling time, you know, in science we use the doubling time. It was 5 months. It has slowed down a little bit, but today, outside France, it's about the same rhythm, doubling time of 5-6 months.
Okay, but there's still a challenge for other countries, right?
Yeah. So very quickly, the game has been translated by volunteers. People who did the workshop said, did you do it in, I don't know, Lithuanian? And I said, no, I give you the Excel sheet and you do it. And then we had the game translated in a few languages and up to 50 languages today, something like that. And then we have people in many countries. We have country coordinator in almost 100 countries. And so they are official representative of the association, and they animate a bunch of fresqueurs, a community of fresqueurs locally. And the next step is that they will be able to organize themselves into an association, a foundation, or whatever, and to go on spreading, having more autonomy. We want to give them the means, financial means, to go even quicker, as we did in France. That's the challenge. To give them contacts, institutional relations, etc., and autonomy, so that it can grow as quick as possible, as the same we did in France, and even quicker.
Okay, because it's already quite a movement. No, if I have it wrong, 1.5 million people already played the game. There's 67,000 fresqueurs, but your ambition goes way further than that, right?
Yeah, when you talk about exponential, you count the number of zeros. So the next step is 1 million. The next target that we have is 1 million fresqueurs.
And the goal is 2025?
No, 25. Maybe in 3 years.
All right.
And if not, in 4 years.
Yeah, so everyone who's not yet...
Yeah, if you're not a fresqueur yet, then go and train yourself. And especially if you're in another country, because we really lack fresqueurs in other countries. And welcome in the adventure.
What's the top 5 of countries you're lacking people?
Wow, I hope I won't make any mistakes, but it should be something like after France, I think it's Belgium, Switzerland, UK, Germany, Spain, something like that.
All right. People noticed your passion, they noticed your experience. You were invited in the COP28 in Dubai. And you joined the talk on youth, education and skills.
Yes, youth, education and skills. Like if education about climate was only for kids. And it's years since there is this day written like that. And every COP, you know, in COPs there are topical days. One about the forest, one about indigenous people, one about youth, education and skills. So I don't really like the idea that education should be only for kids because as a matter of fact, I read the IPCC report and the summary part is not called summary for kids, nor summary for next generation. It's called summary for policymakers. So IPCC works to enlighten, to bring knowledge to policy makers, not to the next generation, because they have to learn how to deal with the shit that they will have to deal with because of us. Okay. So the proposal that we make to UNFCCC and to the organizers of Next COP is to have 2 different days, one about youth. And the day about youth is to have young people come on stage and kick everybody else's ass, because that's what they deserve, to kick negotiators' ass, because they will really die because of climate change a few decades later. And that's what a day about youth is about, and not about we will teach the kids how to I don't know, to clean beaches or something like that. It's not the issue. And then another day about education, about climate change, and also about how to manage skills, because we need to change skills. So you have a job today, maybe you have a different job tomorrow in order to deal with this transition. But especially education, training, long life training, as you said, it has to be for everybody, and focus this day on policymakers, on negotiators, because I can testify that negotiators themselves don't know much about climate change. And then bosses of big companies, politicians, all these people, they really have to do it. And in fact, there is a topic in UNFCCC that is called ACE. ACE is for Action for Climate Empowerment. And ACE comes from the article number 6 of the UNFCCC, the convention. The UNFCCC is Convention of the United Nations on Climate Change. So in the original convention, there is an article about information, education, involvement of the public, etc. And in Article 12 of Paris Agreement, we have another article that also says that countries need to involve on this topic. And this topic, ACE, is really the one that is far, far below at the bottom of the agenda. At the last COP, they didn't even manage to write a text. So the lobbying that we try to have during the COPs, and we need to gather a few NGOs, and if you are involved in an international NGO, you'll be welcome to discuss about that with us. Gather NGOs to sign a manifesto to bring ACE on the top of the agenda, and then to also have some official sponsorship from different countries. So France should be okay, and we hope to have Brazil alongside to bring this idea in Baku next year. And even if we fail in Baku, I hope we will be able to do it in Brazil.
All right. Your statement is also climate literacy. It's really not only for pupils and students, it's for everyone, no? Because you notice that people of your age did not know anything, or at least very little.
Not enough, at least, yeah.
Not enough, yeah.
Yeah, not enough. And I think it's something we don't really, people who are aware of climate change, they don't really measure how important it is to bring knowledge to the rest of the people. And I experienced something quite weird. More than 10 years ago, when I gave my first lectures about climate change, one day I was presenting something and I was thinking, why am I saying that? Because everybody should know that. And then a few seconds later, I realized, how can I think that? Because 1 year ago, I didn't know that. So why should these people be aware of what I say here? And in fact, once you get to know a topic, you feel like you think that everybody knows it. It feels natural for you. And you don't measure how important it is to bring this knowledge to the rest of the people. So myself, I met people who were at the COP number 1. I met people who were in Rio a long time ago. So, and these people were 100% of their time working on action. And it's great, we need that. But I think that they suffer the same bias as me, thinking everybody should know that. And they don't spend enough time on bringing this awareness to the rest of the people. And the awareness, that's the first step to it's the first step. Yeah. Have some emotion and to come to action. Yeah. So this is your platform. What would your call to action be for the people sitting here if they're not yet if they're not yet a
In
Fresquer.
a climate Fresquer.
So if you're not a Fresquer, you can become a Fresquer. That's the first part. Yeah, really stay aware that knowledge is the first step of change. It's called ChangeNOW. So if you want to change now, you need to first understand the topic, and then later you will be able to act. And in order to act, you also need to train yourself. For instance, you get trained on carbon footprint. Then you don't make a confusion between the little, these little gestures of every day when you switch off the light, something like that, and you're able to compare that with taking the plane or not. You see, yeah, it's not same level. And maybe I would like to say why I'm still I still have hope that we're going to make it, because when I think about it, I think that the best ideas to save the world will come from the people who are still not aware of it today. And do you know why? Because they are so much more numerous than us. There is so many people who are still not aware that when we go and get them, when we bring awareness to them, we will be much more people thinking about the problem, and then it will be much easier to solve.
So every one of these people should give a lecture,
spread knowledge,
the word,
do a
climate Fresque workshop,
climate Fresque, or any other thing, conferences, other workshops. Mm-hmm. It's important.
And who else could accelerate your work? Who do you need to cooperate with?
Basically, almost everybody. In fact, if you are in a company, make sure that the Climate Fresque is already spread rolled out in your company. We also need politicians to be on board. We need any international network can be useful for us. If you have country coordinators yourself in different countries, we will put them in contact with our own country coordinators, and then they will see what they can do together. Then we need all the skills needed for a big movement like that. So, yeah, any help is welcome.
All right, Cédric, I hope you succeed in your ambitions, and I wish you all the best improving climate literacy in the world for all ages. May I have a round of applause for Cédric Ringenbach.
Thank you.
All right, some more action. So with these words, we are at the end of this session, Climate Change Education and Action, because we need to add that last word. We hope this session was inspiring. Just as the Eiffel Tower stands as a symbol of human achievement, so too must our commitment to climate change, education and action tower over the challenges ahead, guiding us towards a brighter and greener tomorrow. Thank you all for joining this session, and have a pleasant afternoon.